Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings to you all. Welcome to my channel, that American Niqabi, where we talk about finding a good spouse, being a good spouse, motherhood, tarbiyah, and a lot about hijrah actually, which is just moving to a Muslim country basically. Today we're going to be talking about life in America and wearing niqab at the age of 17, as you can tell by the title. But first, before we start, I want to say I'm really not trying to take any actual credit for being able to start niqab at that age. It is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone actually guided me to. So all credit, all praise goes to Allah alone. Having said that though, there are a few different components that kind of helped create the environment that made it easier for me to wear it, which is what I want to focus on in this video. Because those are things that you can kind of implement for yourself or for your sisters, or even keep in mind when raising your own daughters, inshallah. So basically, in America, whenever a Muslim woman is seen wearing hijab, but especially niqab, the assumption is basically that she's obviously married and it's her husband who's forcing her to wear this. But I obviously wasn't married at the time, and so no, it wasn't my oppressive husband forcing me to wear the niqab. It was a question that I would get often though, because I went to a public university in the heart of one of the busiest cities actually in America. So when I told them that no, I'm not even married, so no, it's not my husband, you just see the blame kind of shift then to the father. So they'll say something like, oh, so it's your dad. Does your dad force you to, does your dad want you to do this, basically? And whenever somebody says this, I can't help but laugh, basically, because I can't wait to see their reaction to what I'm going to tell them next. And what I would tell them is, actually, no, my parents advised me against wearing the niqab. And that's true. So you might be thinking at this point, maybe my parents are modern. They're not actually. My paternal grandfather, rahimahullah, he was a mufti, and my mother has worn niqab for as long as I can remember actually. But this is where the first point comes in. Never push religion onto your kids. My mother was obviously the one giving us tarbiyah, but she never forced us when it came to anything of the deen. Sometimes I do think about this, like, do I wish she was a little stricter with us about, for example, like the prayers that I used to miss in the beginning? Or did my love for the deen only grow so deep at that age because I wasn't feeling, astaghfirullah, like annoyed by the pressure to practice just to obey her? So I've talked to a lot of mothers actually over the years, and even recently discussed this with someone very close to me who's a teacher of tajweed with naturally high expectations from her own daughter when it comes to the deen. A question that I always get asked from mothers of teenage girls in particular is, how did you do it by yourself? Yani, they ask me basically like, how did you choose to wear the proper hijab, to actually wear even niqab? Like, where did that motivation come from? Of course, the answer is it's from Allah, honestly. But there's also other things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did for me that kind of helped me with this. Which brings us to the second point. I actually grew up in a religious family and saw the niqab being normalized from day one. From the very beginning, both of my parents have always honored the deen and all of those who adhere to it. So I grew up kind of seeing that. And honestly, I literally can't remember a single moment in time when my mom didn't wear the niqab. So you really have to honestly lead by example. As the saying goes, kids learn more from what you do rather than what you say. Another thing to remember is kids will actually always want to make their parents proud of them, and I was obviously no different. I actually initially started wearing the hijab with the abaya when I was about, I think it was like 13, 14 years old. But I couldn't stay firm on it, probably because my intentions were totally wrong. I was only doing it to make my mom happy. And I really didn't understand what it meant religiously. So here's the third point that I would say is kind of important. You have to know your actual intention and the reason you're doing it. When I was 17, actually, that's when I started to take my deen seriously. I joined some classes online to learn more, but remember, I grew up in an Islamic home prior to these classes. So my parents created an Islamic environment for me, even though the outside environment was anything but. So when I did come across the tafsir, when we talked about the ayat that were discussing the hijab, and our teacher told us the hikmah behind it all, basically, my mind was already ready to accept it. And so the implementation of that knowledge came very naturally to me. It just all made so much sense. Knowing exactly that the hijab is in fact a command in the Quran, and studying those verses specifically really actually solidified my personal commitment to wearing it. Speaking of commitment though, there's another point I want to make. Don't worry about the commitment or like the permanence of this decision. I think what made it really easy for me also to start wearing it was actually that I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself. I remember my parents were traveling to a Muslim country at that time, so I asked my mom to buy me a niqab from there, and when she came back a few days later, I decided to just try it. It was September, so classes started in August obviously, so we were in the kind of already after the beginning of the semester. And I honestly don't even remember what day it was, but it wasn't anything special, which is another issue I see with some people sometimes. Is like sometimes what we do is we wait for a special moment in time, like, oh, when this happens, when it feels right, when this happens, when XYZ. Don't wait, just do it, honestly, because then you're gonna be waiting forever. So with me, I decided to just try it. I didn't tell myself that this was it, that I'm gonna be a niqabi from now on or anything like that. I didn't say my life is gonna change. I just wanted to try it. That's all it was. So I went to college with it on, and I can never forget actually the feeling that I had just going from the parking lot to my first class that day. Like, that feeling is literally unforgettable, subhanAllah. I felt literally weightless. I don't know how else to describe it, to be honest. Like, I was like literally skipping to class, like jumping basically. Like, there was like a skip in my step. I felt like absolutely just so happy. I was smiling from ear to ear, like behind the niqab basically, and I just thought to myself at that point, I was like, I'm never taking this off. Like, it's just, this is it now. So when I got to class though, I don't think anyone actually was staring more than they usually did anyway. Either way, it never really bothered me too much if I did stand out, which is my last point actually. This isn't in order of importance, by the way. The next point is you have to be confident, and you have to like nurture your own self-worth basically. So my parents, alhamdulillah, they raised me with really good self-esteem, and they didn't do that by overpraising me, by the way. I'd actually argue that when parents praise their kids too much and too often, those kids, I feel like they end up seeking that praise actually, even from others, not just their parents then. So that's something that even I'm conscious of when I think about, like, you know, tarbiyah and stuff basically. But even though I am technically actually a bit of a people pleaser, I'd say, that's only with people that I'm really actually close to. Other than that, things like peer pressure, it never really got to me, to be honest. Like, there were other students that would call me, for example, like Batman or Ninja, or one time somebody called me a thief, which was like, that's kind of offensive. Like, I think that was the one that hurt me the most. But it never really bothered me all that much, to be honest. And I think what also helped me was I had a great support system in my sisters, actually. So basically, to sum it all up, if you're looking to start wearing hijab or start wearing the abaya or start wearing niqab, wherever you are on your journey with hijab, there's really only one advice I'd actually give you. And that's, you have to work towards improvement constantly. No one starts at 100%. You have to remember that. And even I actually have much to improve in my own niqab journey. I actually only cover my eyes online, by the way, not in person yet. I mean, considering your eyes are literally the windows to your soul, I just didn't feel comfortable talking into a camera with my eyes like wide open, basically. So, and the other thing I want to do also is I want to start wearing gloves, inshallah, to cover my hands as well. So these are things that I feel like I could improve on. But the point is, all of us, I think, if we really think about it and if we're really honest with ourselves, there's probably some improvements that we know we can make to our hijab such that Allah would become happier. And you have to remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciates even an atom's weight of good. So even if all you're taking is a small inch of a step towards Him, that's still a really big deal, and especially to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there's a hadith, inshallah, I'll leave the reference in the description, where He says if you take a step towards Him, He runs towards you. Like, He will, like, there is nothing too small of a good deed in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't belittle yourself or any action that you take. Just make sure that you're committing basically to a state of improvement, a state of constantly taking that one step closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and having a mindset basically that says, I want to be better, I want to be closer to Allah. So inshallah, that basically concludes the points that I kind of wanted to talk about in this video, and inshallah we're going to do another video that's going to be more evidence-based with more of the references, inshallah, to talk about the actual command in the Quran and what the conditions of hijab are as well, because that's also very important, I think, and it's a really good motivator as well. I feel like it's a good reminder always, even for myself. So I'd love to hear from my sisters, honestly, from all of you, inshallah. I'll leave my email in the description below. If you need any kind of advice, or if you need, like, sometimes it's good just to have, honestly, like a third perspective. So feel free to message me, and of course you can always comment on this video. Let me know what you think, if there's any corrections you'd make. I'd love to hear from you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Until next time, take care.